serious? People who experienced being held at gunpoint. What was the situation and how did you manage it? Robbed at gunpoint while working in the family grocery store. I was 17. Opened the register drawer and stepped away. They were too stupid to lift up the drawer where several $100s were sitting and only got away with about $80. After they left I realized I had wet my drawers. Drove through Mexico one time to get to Guatemala. Got stopped by the Mexican army at a drug checkpoint. Had a rifle stuck in my face and was ordered out of my vehicle. When you have a rifle in your face, you just do what you're told. They went digging through my car and found my traveling money. They asked me what it was for. It was several $100s, and then put it back. I moved it later because I thought there was a decent chance they'd call ahead and have me robbed. I never got robbed, so either they didn't or the ambush missed us. It wasn't incredibly terrifying, but it certainly makes you very conscious about what you're saying when held at gunpoint. The bank that I worked at was robbed, and the guy had a gun. We had bullet-resistant glass separating us, but he still shot at us all several times. The worst part is, we gave him the money. He was too drugged out and didn't notice it, thought it was fake and got more agitated no matter what we did. He was threatening to shoot customers and we just didn't know what to do. He finally ran out about 1 minute before the police showed up. We think he must have had an accomplice by the station to let him know. The police do not use sirens in that situation to avoid turning it into a hostage situation. No one was injured, but a customer with a heart condition was taken to the hospital as a precaution. Most of the tellers left banking afterwards, myself included. New York City, 2009. My friend and I were mugged just before Halloween. The guy demanded everything we had. I handed over all my phone, wallet, keys. My friend refused. The guy shot him in between the eyes. I watched my friend die that night. I remember the blood hitting my face and feeling numb, and then looking on the ground and seeing my dead friend. My instinct was to try and run after them, but they were gone. It was late and no one was around really. I went to a payphone and called the cops. The cops came and put me in cuffs while the ambulance took my friend away. I was brought to the police station and questioned before finally being released and driven home by an officer. It's gotten easier to manage and deal with, but I think about it every day and it hurts. It was back in the OC-80s in Southern California. I was playing laser tag in the street with a friend after dark. There was a small modern business park with ramps and stairs near my house. We were running and jumping and having a great time. Suddenly 2 police cruisers pull up aggressively and 2 cops jump out with their guns drawn on us and yell for us to drop our weapons. Our glowing, science fiction sounding plastic oversized toys. We drop them and fall to the ground as they walk up to us with their guns inches from the back of our heads. The whole time we were screaming, "It's laser tag. It's laser tag." I don't really remember what happened next except for my mom being super pissed at our crotchety old neighbor from across the street. She was convinced the only reason the cops showed up was because he called them, even though he knew we were playing a game. I was working at a coffee shop and our tip jar kept getting stolen from the drive-thru. It made me really mad because we weren't making that much money hourly, so any little bit on top of that was really appreciated. I was the supervisor for the shift and I saw a girl sneaking toward the tip jar and knew exactly what was going to happen. She saw me notice her, then ran and grabbed it and ran off. I ran out the front door chasing her, and when she saw that I was going to catch her, she threw the tip jar down in the parking lot and hopped in a car with several other young kids that was obviously waiting on her. I started yelling at them saying I was going to call 911 and that I had their license plate, and a kid pulled out a revolver and stuck it out the back window at me. I didn't even really have time to process it. I just put my hands up and backed off and they drove away. I went back and collected the $1.37 they almost made off with from the parking lot. I handled it like a complete dumbass. Working overnights at a gas station. 3 AM sometime in December. Some guy came up to the locked doors on the one side of the building and tried to get in. I was standing right next to them making coffee for the morning. So I notice he's wearing a mask on his face and I go, "Oh man, it's cold outside, but not that cold, weird. Arizona BTW. I turn and point to the unlocked set and yell, "Go around." Then he points at me. I'm like, "WTF man, go around." Well, he doesn't and decides to walk away. At this point I'm beginning to think that whole thing was odd. I check the cameras and sure enough, dude is pointing a revolver at me 5 feet away through the glass right at my face, and I told him to go around. He ended up going down the street 3 miles and robbing a different gas station. Felt pretty sick after realize how close I came to possibly being injured. TLDR, ending up having a gun pointed at my face and I didn't even realize it. My dad was eating alone in a parking lot at night and got held up for some money. He handed it over and that was that. But he always tells me that the predominant emotion he felt when he saw the gun was seething anger. Like it pissed him off to be so helpless more than it actually frightened him. But just for a split second until the fear finally hit him. I was an oblivious teenager living in a bad part of Houston. Turned the corner walking my dog and ended up in the middle of what looked like a SWAT raid. I was on my phone and they were raiding the corner house. Had what was probably a greenhorn point fire pistol at me and screamed to turn back the way I came or something. I turned and ran my ass home with my fat golden retriever huffing at my side. Point of the story. I learned to pay more attention even close to home. I opened my front door to 2 dudes with guns back when I was in college. I was leaving for a party and there was a weed deal going on in the living room. I thought they were the cops at first until I realized they had stockings over their faces. Pushed me into the living room. Held guns to the dealer and my heads, not the buyer. Pretty sure he was in on it. And took the weed and money and left. I had a red mark on my face from the barrel of the gun. I was actually just pissed at everyone involved. Didn't really faze me otherwise. I still went to the party. I think it was because I was 19. If it happened to me now I'd probably eat my pants and start crying. I was literally suicidal when a guy put a gun in my back because he wanted my Chuck Taylors. I turned around, walked toward him as he started backing up and aiming the gun into my forehead and dared him to pull the trigger. As I am obviously not dead, this strategy worked. Seemingly by scaring the id out of him and he ran away. No idea if the gun was even loaded or real for that matter, but I definitely do not recommend this strategy. Had I not had a death wish I probably would have parted with my shoes after eating myself. Even wanting to die, nothing in my life has ever had my heart pounding harder than that moment. I was next to a bench when it happened and I think I just sat there staring at the ground for at least an hour in a complete daze afterward before just going home and sleeping all day the next day. My father was and still very much is a piece of it. No longer in my life, thank God. When my twin sister and I were 9ish, my dad dragged her and I out to go hunting early in the morning. As 9-year-olds who had never been, with no breakfast, and pretty exhausted, we weren't necessarily super quiet. My dad apparently had enough of this noise, turned around and put the butt of his rifle to his shoulder and said something along the lines of, "If you don't shut up I'll shoot you." Suddenly awake, my sister and I shut the duck up and didn't dare make any more noise. He didn't shoot anything, or anyone. Went home and grumbled about how my sister and I scared away the deer. Told a counselor what happened at school and nothing came of it. His word trumped ours. We didn't escape him until 4 years later. But hey, we survived. I was driving my friend's truck home from the bars with him in the passenger seat. A cop got behind me and flipped his lights on. I think he saw me pull out of the bar parking lot and assumed I was drinking. I drove for about a mile before I pulled into an empty parking lot. Sat in the truck for about 5 minutes and 3 more cop cars pulled up. The original cop spoke on some megaphone and told me to get out of the vehicle with my hands up and walk backwards to his voice. Then when I was close to him I turned my head slightly and saw 4 cops pointing their guns at me. He told me to get on my knees. And once I was on my knees, the stupid mother ducker kicked me in the back of the head and broke my nose on the concrete. He cuffed me and put me in his squad car. 10 minutes later he got in his front seat and told me my license was suspended. It wasn't. But he was going to be nice and let me go with a warning. I got out of there as fast as I could. That was 10 years ago and I still wish I would have hired a lawyer to sue the city or at least try to get that scumbag fired. At a gas station playing slot machines. Illegal here in Houston but they're everywhere. And a guy comes running in out of breath. About 10 seconds later, another guy comes in and points a gun at him. The first guy runs straight to me and hides behind me. The gun gets pointed right at me. I instantly started sweating and got weak in the knees. I yelled out the first thing I thought, "Don't ducking shoot me," to get to him and turned around at the guy hiding and said, move and grabbed him and pushed him to the side. In the split second the gun was pointed at me. I saw everything I ever wanted to do, everything I've ever loved. Got a new look on life, which lasted about 48 hours lol. Right after I shoved the guy with the gun must have had an epiphany because he just took off out of the door and the other guy got off the floor and walked out looking like he'd seen a ghost, probably his own. It scared the shit out of me like nothing before. Any feeling you get when you're nervous or going on a roller coaster or doing something that you think scares you. It isn't until you've had a gun pointed in your face. It really ducking sucked. I was stupid and was dating this guy that smoked crack sugar. We went to a hotel to hang out and he took out his pipe. He offered me some, but I declined. After a while, his paranoia started up and he pulled a handgun out, aimed it at me, and began to blame me for all that was wrong with the world. He threatened to shoot me many times. I simply stayed quiet, waited until he passed out because he was drinking heavily as well, and GTF out of there. I was in Bogota, and the guy kept yelling for cash. I had like 10 mil pesos on me. Knew he was going to be pissed because he's also just made the scene. There's ducking people around. It's the middle of daylight. This is my third time being robbed in 2 months. The one prior the guys had machetes. I was tired and I just couldn't ducking deal. I had to get out of this country. I walked away from the guy with a gun. He ran away. I was on a plane back to Boston a few days later after being gone for half a year in South America. I was rear-ended while driving at night. I had just gotten into town and left the airport to try and catch friends downtown. No dice, so I decided to go home. On my way I'm at a red light and a guy hits me while I'm at a dead stop, so I get out to inspect damage. Dude gets out of his car and aims a Desert Eagle at me, square in the chest, and asks why I'm out of my car. A woman with him pops out and screams to shoot me. I looked at my feet, put my hands up, and started to talk. I told the guy I was just checking out my bumper, but it's fine. I just got home and had a bad week. Just want to get some sleep, etc. I backed up slowly until I hit my open car door. I can tell the guy is still aiming at me, so I say it's cool. I didn't see it and I'm just going to drive home. It worked. He didn't say another word to me and put his gun away. The light was red again, so I waited. And then the guy goes around me, stops in the road to check for traffic, and drives off. I got his make, model, and plate, not to mention descriptions of him and the woman. I called 911 and the cops came out of nowhere patrolling all over town looking for the guy. I have my info and report to a cop and went home. 2 weeks later they found the car, abandoned and partially burned. 10 miles away. It was stolen the night I had my run-in. I was working graveyard shift at a gas station. It was near the end of the night, so I was looking at the lotto tickets and counting tickets for my shift sheet. Dude walked in and right up to the counter. I didn't have time to even look up. He put the barrel of the gun right on my forehead. He told me to empty the till into a bag. Calmly I told him every move I was making so he didn't freak out. When he realized it was only about $30 in cash, he told me to grab him 3 cartons of Marlboro Reds. After that he told me he was gonna go grab a gallon of milk, and if I looked up at him, he would kill me. I laid my hands on the counter and stared at my shoes. He grabbed the milk, the smokes, and the cash and told me to turn on the gas pump. That's right. He needed to fuel up after he robbed the store. As soon as he was pumping the gas and looking away, I hit the emergency rescue button under the counter. I then jumped over the counter and locked the doors and hid. I didn't look up until I could see the flashing blue and red lights outside. What I thought was an hour was only a few minutes passing by. Dude didn't even finish filling his tank before the cops showed up. The worst part was after I unlocked the door and let the police in the store. I hadn't said a word until an officer asked how I was doing and if I was injured at all. I looked up and attempted to talk, but instead just threw up all over myself and the poor officer. I quit that job. 90. I was on my first job, 550 kilometers away from my parents. I was 16, which explains why I was taking a trash bag out with a beer in my hand. As I was walking towards the bins, I saw a guy with fresh bloody scrapes on his face. Not bad, but looked like he had been in a fight. I dropped the bags in the bin and turned back. He wanted to talk with me. He was between me and my mate's apartment where I was hanging out that Friday night, so I had no choice but to engage in small talk. I was right. He had been in a fight in the local pub just around the corner, which is the thing he wanted to talk about. Something about a woman, and even during his explanation he revealed to be somewhat deserving of a bit of a beatdown. I can't remember what it was, but something about being an arsehole to his ex and the new guy stopping that. He kept talking about revenge. I was trying to disengage. Had managed to already to do the walls so that he wasn't between me and the bungalow apartment. Was planning on long withdrawal back. One step at a time when he suddenly just said, "Do you want to die?" and showed a handle of handgun. I'm from Finland, so handguns are rare. And being carried in open even more so. I had no idea if it is real or not. All I knew was that there is a drunken, beaten up guy planning a vengeance with a gun, and he had asked me a question. I said nah, not really. Here, wanna have a beer instead? And he put the gun back to his jacket pocket and took my beer. I said farewell with a smile and laugh. Said something like, "Take it easy, man. I have to go back inside. I think it is the better choice for you too." Turned my back and walked back, trying to look as relaxed and worry-free as I could. The beer I drank pretty much on 2 gulps back inside was one of the best beers I've ever had. I didn't call the cops. It was the sort of neighborhood where it isn't the best of ideas. Factory-owned cheap housing, dirt roads and yards. Ants were a huge problem. Everyone worked in the 2 factories nearby or in the military harbor at the end of the road. All were unemployed ex-factory workers. This was about 17 years ago. I was living in Colombia at the time and it was very insecure those days. We had just finished high school and I was with 2 friends talking outside, a couple of houses down from my place. My friend was wearing a long-sleeved shirt and sitting in his new bike, a motorcycle, given to him as a graduation gift, with the keys in the ignition. I was standing and so was my other friend. All of a sudden 2 guys come around the corner and one of them pulls a gun and places it to the back of my head. I actually felt the muzzle, while the other just lifted his t-shirt and showed the gun he had tucked on his jeans. They said, "Give us the keys. We're taking the bike." What happened next happened very fast, but I'll explain it in slow fashion. First things first, I froze, not playing the hero in this story. The friend that's standing had some random papers in his hands. I really can't recall what they were. And then he starts to fast talk, saying, "Oh, man, you don't want to have anything to do with us. We're just some poor kids. I just got accepted into community college. Cause we can't afford private university. These are my acceptance papers. Wanna read them? We're just talking here. This bike is the neighbor's. We're just poor guys. This gold chain is a fake. We don't even live around here." And he said similar things in like 5 seconds. The other friend, sitting in the bike, while the fast talker is droning on and on, very slowly pulls the keys from the ignition and just drops them into his sleeve. The 2 thieves look at each other. I close my eyes knowing this is it. I'm gonna die a virgin. Next thing I know, guy pointing at me says, "These duckers have nothing." He tucks the gun in his jeans. The other one says, "Turn around. You guys didn't see nothing." Sure. We didn't see a thing. We all turn and look to one side of the street. Them dudes I guess hightail it the other way. We stay silent for about a minute. AMD then immediately move the bike in a hurry to my place and lock the door. My dad looks at us, and we're pale as a dead fish. We tell him and boy is he mad. He gets the neighbor and put me and my friends on the truck to go around the neighborhood. See if we can spot the would-be thieves. Lucky for them, I guess. We didn't. TLDR. 2 friends and I are almost mugged. A friend sweet talked our way out of that one.